Okay, so a slightly different one today because I am going to be joining as your host. And Sam is now the expert, which brings him great. I can tell you this. Welcome everyone. It's great to see a few returning faces as well. I know a few of you were here last week and the week before as well. And it's great to see that you're enjoying these sessions. So today we're going to be covering a really hot topic. So we're going to be covering AI. Now, I would love to say you will leave this as an expert in AI, but as we know, it's such a huge topic that we just can't cover everything in half an hour. So today we've decided to focus specifically on one area. So how you can improve your profitability with AI, because it's often something that most people don't talk about. They're more about the creative sides of things, whereas actually we want to help you deliver the results that matter, and that's what we do for our clients. So yeah, here we are. Cool. So I guess before we do that, we should probably introduce ourselves. So my name is Florence. I'm the marketing manager here at Thought Quarter, and we've also got Sam here as well. Sam is the MD and the co-founder of Thought Quarter, and essentially we're a tech agency. We like to work with people who are contributing to make the world a better place. And in terms of what we do three things that all lead back to innovation. So we do strategy, we do design, and we do software development. So strategy is essentially figuring out how to do the innovation. Design is designing it in a way that's going to deliver the results and also do it in a sustainable manner too. And then delivery is actually making it happen in the end. Cool. So Sam, I guess we should probably start with the big question of what is AI?
Good question. That's nothing like an easy question to start me off on, is it? So I guess my personal slight pet hate is when I come to a session like this and we end up going down a ChatGPT or kind of Midjourney rabbit hole. So I guess I want to just put out there at the start that that's not AI. So those are tools that use AI to make a real impact or to put together outcomes. But what I really want to talk about today is how we can use those technologies in our businesses, rather than just saying, I'm going to teach my marketing team how to use ChatGPT. Actually, how do we understand the technology behind it and how do we embed it in our businesses? And I guess if I had to define AI in one sentence, it's basically a computer-based way of trying to replicate the way humans learn and solve problems. Now, the thing that computers are really good at is taking an input, running it through a predefined set of code, algorithms, whatever, and giving you a predictable output. Whereas where AI is different is it understands the real world. It understands the spoken words, unstructured data. It learns how those things link together, and then it can use that learning to generate an output that it wasn't coded to create. And that's really probably the most powerful thing is that AI can take you in directions that you didn't even realize existed, but that are very valuable for your business.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I really like that you covered it in the first instance, that this isn't going to be about ChatGPT and that content creation side of things, because we all know how much I hate that too. So I guess AI has been around for quite a while now, although it is in the spotlight at the moment and for the past few years. But why should people be thinking about it now? Why should businesses suddenly add it to their priority list, Sam?
So it's a tough one, isn't it? Because, I mean, without referencing anyone specific, I think every business out there is having challenges in some way, shape, or form. It hasn't been the best year to be leading a business. There are some exceptions, but by and large, businesses are finding it challenging. The market isn't great. I think I'm a bit of a stats nerd, so I was looking at the ONS statistics, and they were saying that 22% of businesses are having turnover that falls month on month, and only 15% of businesses are actually expecting their turnover to go up this year. So that kind of gives you an idea of the picture nationwide. You go one step below it, everyone is telling you that costs have gone up: labor costs, material costs, energy costs, interest rates, etc. So if revenue is staying flat or falling and costs are coming up, that profit margin in the middle is what's getting squeezed, and that's what funds innovation. So on that side, it's a really tough time to be considering AI. The flip side of it is that the opportunity is absolutely massive. I pulled a little chart from one of the ONS reports And have you got it, Flo? Can you share it?
Yeah,
Oh,
there
there
we
you
go.
go. Look at that. So this was back, I think, in their April or May report. They were looking at how businesses are using AI. And the terrifying thing is that 78% of businesses said it's not applicable. So just by the fact that you're on this webinar, you're thinking about where AI may fit, you're automatically in the top 22% of businesses. But if you just dig one layer deeper, the next two items on those questions were spam filters, which, let's be fair, everyone is using, even if you don't know it's there. They definitely exist, and not sure. If you remove those two answers, it's not 78%, it's closer to 90 something percent. So just by understanding where AI can fit in your business and having a plan for making it work, you're potentially putting yourself in the top 5% of organizations in the UK. Most likely, you're going to put yourself in the top 1% of organizations in your market and in your segment. So whilst the timing is difficult, the opportunity is massive, which is why I think now is the right time to be talking about it.
I think that's quite scary stats, really, isn't it? And I think the first time I saw this chart, I was quite amazed how many people aren't getting involved yet. But it's safe to say that AI isn't going away, like it or not. I know we've been saying that for years, but it really is going to be a massive part of everything we do. So if you choose to jump on now, great, you're going to see more of an impact, but ultimately you'll be jumping on at some point. So why not get the competitive advantage for it too?
It's interesting to think about how the investment landscape has changed a little bit as well. So last year, and to a certain extent the year before, any pitch deck that had AI in it was all over it. Like VC money was pouring into it. This year, there's been a little bit of a reversal. So the AI opportunities and technologies and firms that are getting invested in are the ones that are really crystallizing their position in the market. So it's no longer enough to say we have an AI strategy. Now you need to know what that strategy is, how it's going to affect your customer experience, and what the payoff's going to be.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, Sam, we should probably, on that note, get on with it. So today you're going to be telling us 3 ways or sharing 3 ways in which our audience and businesses can use AI to actually improve their profitability.
Yes, so I had a lot of fun with this. We kind of looked through the attendee list. I got myself down loads of rabbit holes, and then I realized that actually we've got a fairly broad audience, so I needed to make sure that we selected something that was applicable for everyone. So I kind of distilled it down to three types of AI, or 3 areas of AI. First of all, I want to talk about large language models, which we kind of sometimes refer to as generative AI. Then I want to talk about predictive AI, my personal favorite. And then finally, I want to talk about computer vision. And I guess for each one, I'll give you a little intro and explain the role that it can play in your business. And we can talk about some examples and a couple of real life use cases that are out there in the wild. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good. Let's get going.
Excellent. So large language models, or generative AI, I guess this is the second and final time that I'm going to mention ChatGPT in our discussion. That's
I hope
probably
so.
one of the best known types of AI out there. Now, the really special thing about them, the secret sauce, is the large bit. So essentially what a large language model is a statistical model of language. It understands how words statistically relate to each other. So if you say apples, it knows what words are most likely to follow apples and what types of sentences apples are likely to appear in. That means that it can give the impression of understanding speech and of being able to create valid outputs and valid text. Now, just to give you an idea of how large, I couldn't get the number for GPT-4, but the GPT-3 model has 175 billion parameters. So you imagine how many permutations and connections it contains inside that model. That gives you an idea of how large the model is. And there's another model out there called Claude 2, which is a really, really cool one. That can accept up to 100,000 tokens or words in its input. So that means that you can give it a whole book at a time, and it can summarize it, it can tell you what it's about, or it can identify conflicts, constraints, or missing elements. So the thing that large language models are absolutely brilliant at is ingesting a massive amount of content. Because they understand language, they can take that content and they can weave it together into essentially a model of your business, your universe, your language. Then based on that, you can use them to either answer questions or provide contextual guidance. Does that make sense, Flo? You with me so far?
I'm with you. I'm hanging on.
Excellent. So I guess that's probably my first profit improvement idea. There are organizations out there that are using large language models to handle incoming customer feedback. Now, if you're in a direct consumer business, you probably have tons and tons and tons of incoming comms. It might be client support requests, it's probably social media messages, direct messages, etc., etc., etc. Now, there's a few ways you can go about it. You can use a large language model to suggest immediate responses. So somebody logs an issue or a complaint, you can say, hey, the majority of our customers found this particular piece of information useful, or here is the manual for your particular device or for the kit that you've bought. The slightly more subtle way of using large language models is to analyze incoming content and determine the sentiment behind it. Because we all know that, well, if you're in a direct consumer business, you'll know that kind of the 80-20 rule, Pareto's principle, really, really holds. So there's 20% of customer feedback that can cause you 80% of your challenges. Equally, if it's handled well, it can be a massive opportunity. So using a large language model to detect sentiment behind a communication can actually flag these things and make sure that your teams are engaging with the highest priority feedback the quickest. Somebody leaves you a negative review on social media, somebody leaves a critical comment, somebody mentions something that you want to handle quickly, then it's flagged internally and it's dealt with much sooner than, say, a generic question about a competition or something like that. And then at that point, you start to really see the difference, because you can have either the same size team delivering more value, or you can actually have a smaller team that's focused on the highest priority items.
I think to put in there, it sounds like such a simple and obvious way of doing it, but the amount of businesses who will increase their staff and increase the amount of teams they've got on this to try and get the results, when actually it'd be far more beneficial in terms financially to use this technology and invest in it once, and then have a team that works, I guess, smarter and not harder.
Yeah, and it forces you to, I guess we'll touch on this later, but it forces you to bring your data together. It's really, really easy for customer feedback to sit in the customer services area. Actually, that's a gold mine. That's what tells you what's wrong with your products.
You're talking to a marketer.
There's a whole other webinar, survivor bias. Honestly, go away and Google survivor bias in the Second World War and how it influenced the design of warplanes. That's basically what using data correctly can do for you. And even if you're in B2B, so for example, we don't have a massive amount of customer feedback, but we use large language models to review complex documents. Not to sign them off finally, but it's actually handy for us to put a really complex document into a large language model and go, can you just tell me what conflicts? Can you tell me what's missing? And then it highlights the areas that we should be focusing on, which actually leads me on to my real world case study, if I may. It's a topic close to my heart. I spent many, many years working in the insurance industry, and particularly on complex claims. So there's a massive insurance company out in the States that has now started using a large language model for its claims adjusters. So it means that when a claim comes in, a large language model summarizes all of the evidence and the facts to date, so that the adjusters can have a succinct summary, but also can ask questions of the AI saying, when did this incident happen? They've then trained the large language model with all of their procedures and previous claims. So the adjuster can then ask the model, have we had a claim like this before? What percentage of our claims looks like this? How many claims like this one have we paid out on in the past? What else has this person claimed for? And the best way to kind of bring it to life is to imagine that you have a really, really experienced colleague sat in the corner of your office with absolutely perfect recall across every claim that you've ever touched. That's what a large language model is doing for them and enabling them to process claims more quickly, but crucially at a better accuracy rate, and reducing either false payouts or, on the other hand, preventing them turning down valid claims.
I mean, yeah, it's making a huge difference for them, I can imagine. Maybe not so great on our side of things, but you never know. So I guess, Sam, we should probably look at moving on to the second use that you mentioned, so
Yeah.
predictive AI.
Yes. So you may have heard of machine learning or big data. I'm not going to tie myself in not going into the exact explanation of machine learning because I'll get it wrong and there's kind of quite a complex hierarchy. But predictive AI is essentially an AI model that is trained on a large amount of previous data so that then it can use what it's learned from that data to predict future events. Perhaps you've heard the saying, red sky at night, sailor's delight. It's a perfect example of using previous data to predict a future event. Now imagine that the sailor was able to process 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 different variables to make a very accurate prediction for the next day. That's what predictive AI does. So perhaps as an example that many of us have come across, I don't know if you've ever gone on a website and you get the little Cloudflare pop-up that says just validating your connection. That's AI. It detects your usage and compares it to what it knows and tries to predict whether you're a bot or not. And every time you do that, every time you click on one of those pages, you're actually helping to train Cloudflare's AI models so that it can become more and more accurate and distinguish between a bot and a real human.
I think that's obviously something that our audience, I'm sure some of them can apply if they haven't already, to sort that out. But is there anything else they could use this for, Sam, to sort of coming back to that financial gain, I guess, and competitive advantage?
So I guess I suppose this takes me to my profit improvement idea. Whatever product or service you have, if you can get it to generate any kind of telemetry data or analytics, you can ingest those and you can use predictive AI to actually anticipate what your customer wants next. And then you can offer it to them before they ask you. And that helps you in two ways. Number one, you're actually putting opportunities out there for conversion that may not have happened. But number two, you're taking your customers from being happy to delighted because you're anticipating their needs and reducing potential downtime. So for example, I don't know if you've ever got in your car in the morning and Siri flags up saying, hey, are you going to work? Or are you going here? Are you going there? That's predictive AI. It's using the data of your journeys to predict where you might be going on this particular day. So for example, let's just say you are a manufacturer of cars. You could collect the telemetry data for particular engine faults and then predictively say, hey, your engine has been running 10% hotter for the past 4 days. That's likely to indicate that you need a water top up. We've gone ahead and predictively booked a service visit for you. Let us know if you don't want us to do that. Or on a much kind of smaller scale, say your product was direct to consumer and you were able to identify interactions with your website. If you see somebody's been on your support page 4 or 5 times in the past 2 weeks, you could actually flag up a preemptive customer services call that says, hey, we've noticed that you might be struggling with your device. Could we help you get the most out of it? Would you like me to book a call with one of our engineers or customer success specialists? These are relatively small things, but they kind of put micro interactions into your customer journey. And those micro interactions are the ones that are most likely to delight your customers and turn them into advocates.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's a small tweak, it's a small change, it's adapting something new. But actually, if you apply that to X amount of customers, that ratio, what impact is that going to have on your profits? Are you going to suddenly improve their customer experience and become their favorite as to someone they might just choose? I think from a marketer's perspective, we can't afford to ignore this technology. It would just be silly of us.
Yeah, and I think from a kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Data point of view. I was talking before about customer feedback data kind of sitting in a silo. You've probably already got some telemetry data because most product managers or engineers will build telemetry into it. You just probably don't know it exists. You've probably got web analytics. You're just not joining them together. By using this data in a centralized way, what you're doing is kind of telling a story across the customer lifecycle, which is where the revenue opportunities come in. Can I talk about a real life case study that I love?
You can.
So again, I'm a stats nerd. You may or may not know that there's an agency in the UK that supervises police forces. And they grade police forces to kind of say, they're good, bad, indifferent, they need support, etc. If you're a real super nerd, it's called a Peel grade. Now, the way they do it, the top level is called engage, which is a polite way of saying they're really screwing up and they need urgent help. Typically, for a police force to get into engage status, it's the result of a period of time of complaints, of targets being missed, etc., which means that by the point this gets invoked, you've already potentially harmed the public. So they created a little AI, predictive AI model to do it. It took 8 weeks to build it. And the prototype basically looks at data from 999 calls, home office crime stats, crime resolution stats, etc. And the first cut of it was already 60% accurate at predicting that a police force may be heading into engage grade. And it's quite a big, high-level example, but in just 8 weeks, it was able to make significant difference to some of the most vulnerable people in society, which is quite. I thought was just a nice, heartwarming example of AI. I like it. Nice. I suppose, if I may, I should throw you under the bus and ask you about bees, shouldn't I? At this point.
All right. Well, this wasn't planned, guys, but yeah. Me and Sam were talking about our favourite use cases of AI, and being a country girl at heart, big fan of bees, which is ironic because my dad's allergic and got put in hospital from them. But hey, we move. So bees are really important to agriculture. I mean, I had a look at the stats, and they actually account for 71% of certain crops' pollination needs. So we're not just talking about these nice, cute little bees here. We're actually talking about the impact it has on the world. But the problem is they're declining. The mortality rates are getting higher and higher. So a company has actually started creating smart beehives, the physical things. So essentially what that means is they can automate various aspects of bee care to reduce these mortality rates. So they've got processors, sensors, vent systems, things like that, but monitor their conditions. So then the AI system sort of intervenes where necessary to provide what they need so the bees can live longer. But what I really love about this is there is this pesky little mite, I can't remember its name, and it's actually responsible for the loss of 43% of colonies in the US. So it's a huge problem. It's annoying to everyone, but it's having a massive impact too. So this AI, combined with the technologies in the hive, can detect where toxic substances, including these mites, are in the environment, and the entrances are then triggered shut when they are to protect the colony. Now that's huge. It sounds so simple, but it's massive. So these beehives are working already, and the impact they've had in a year was an 80% reduction in bee mortality and a 50% increase in yield. So although it might be bees, bring this back to business, that is a huge stat. Imagine yourself having an increase of 50%. You'd be pretty overjoyed. So yeah, thanks, Sam, for letting me ramble about my passion project there.
But it's basically a factory, isn't it? You know, any manufacturing process has sensors and different data points that all relate to the quality of the output. And it's exactly the same principle, isn't it? You know, bringing that data together and using predictive AI to predict the impact of changes in the environment is what drives real change. Anyway,
it is, and I think, yeah, and then say we'll move on to the final case, but I think at this point it's just really important to say, although we might be talking about cases to certain industries, this really does apply to everybody. So yeah, do not discount yourselves just because we haven't mentioned it today. I know, Sam, I'm sure you'd love to chat to absolutely anyone who wants to talk AI because, well, stopping you is hard work. So I guess we'll move on to our final case then to make sure we finish on time. So computer vision, Sam, tell me about it.
Computer vision. So computer vision is essentially a combination of large language models and machine learning that basically allows AI to understand real world pictures and videos. Now, this is something that as humans we take for granted. We see an image and we know that it has a picture of an apple and the apple is slightly off and it should be green, but it's not, etc., etc. But for computers to do that, it's a little harder. But the real win is in the fact that the majority of human communications are visual. And we kind of do a really good job of forcing so much communication through written channels, typically at a time when people least want to write. You know, if you have a complaint, the last thing you want to do is write it. You'd love to just take a picture of it and somebody understands what's wrong with it. So I guess for me, it's about thinking about how you can use computer vision to make your customer journey simpler and more straightforward. So I don't know if anyone in the audience uses Vinted. Imagine that you could just take a picture of the label and it automatically creates the listing for you with the right size, the right make, and suggest a price. That's computer vision at work. Or like I live in Cornwall, And there was a project not too long ago to use computer vision to grade strawberries. And at the point of picking, not even bother picking the strawberries that weren't going to make the quality cut. Now, the impact of that is that not only does it reduce quality control time, but those strawberries eventually fall down and fertilize the ground, and you get circular economy in action. So I guess the real win here, the profit improvement idea, is to think about whether you can either use computer vision to streamline incoming feedback, defects, returns, those kind of things, or use it to vet incoming materials. So you can use it to grade stock, to grade materials, or even just to flag things for attention, so you can direct your attention to the things that are most likely to need it. And on the outgoing side of your processing, can you use it to QA products? Make sure that the labels are printed correctly, make sure that the packets are complete, make sure that the bows are tied correctly, whatever it is. These are things that typically rely on human packing operatives, but there's an opportunity to kind of really focus in on the things that need attention whilst letting AI handle most of it. And if I have just 2 minutes, I'd love to tell you about a real world example that I helped a client with a year or so ago. They were into the circular economy, and the problem they were trying to solve is that when a commercial building gets renovated or remodeled, there's a massive amount of waste. And often, some of that waste is actually perfectly fit for purpose, but it's cheaper for a contractor to come in and remove everything and reinstate it rather than just go around piecemeal. So the application of computer vision there was that as the project manager goes round, they take a picture of the items that they're removing. Computer vision recognizes what it is. It's a fire door, it's a double glazed window, it's a ceramic toilet, etc., and then automatically makes it available on a marketplace so that other people in the area can use those products for other purposes. Now, it's a prototype, and it's just kind of starting to gain traction, but it gives you an idea of the impact that computer vision can have on waste reduction and on the circular economy.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's I'm keen, Sam, to kind of end this on, we've talked about all these amazing and really cool examples, and obviously the bees as well, which was highly important. But how do people actually go about tackling this? They know they probably want to use AI, they know they probably can, but how do you get started?
So you basically need to focus on the two extremes. You need to find a really well-defined, small, specific use case for AI, and that becomes your introduction point. But the only way you can do that is if you start really big and you consider the entirety of your customer journey or business process and all of the data that you have. So you need to start by mapping that out, see how it relates to each other. We sometimes call this front to back and top to bottom mapping. So you kind of map the customer journey and the systems and data that are touched. And from there, you'll identify 1 or 2 priority inflection points. And then from there, you need to define a strategy for how you're going to use AI to make a difference, what difference you're going to make, and pull together an implementation plan. And I guess putting it in marketing terms, what we would normally call that is a discovery session to kind of open up that really big picture, followed by a definition piece to zoom in on exactly what's going to happen, and then into a roadmap and gradual execution.
Yeah, I think it's a process that works sort of every time, but it's really important to understand your use for it rather than just saying, I want to include AI because it's AI. Like, let's actually drill down to it and work out where it's going to benefit your business the most, because it is an investment. And I guess, Sam, the one question that I was speaking to with someone earlier will end on, how much is this going to cost people?
How long is the piece of string? Always the question you trip me up with. So to give you an idea, we've done a few of these engagements. At the lower end for the discovery piece, you're looking around about 5K. At the much higher end, you're probably looking at 25, 30, depending on the complexity, scope, and size. And then for the road mapping piece, again, at the low end, you're looking at about 5K. At the high end, you're probably looking at about 20K. And that gives you a really well-defined roadmap along with technology suggestions, integration considerations, and a proper project scope.
And I think on that, it's 5K for a business. Obviously, it's money and it's a lot of money, but I guess it's weighing up whether that's going to give you more of a return on investment and where you could save money by bringing in this technology too.
Yeah, and the principle we always go with is to fail fast. We would much rather spend a small amount of money finding that something doesn't work rather than anything else. And it might be that you find something that works, and then you want to spend some more chasing that particular theme and identifying it and mapping it out. But it's always worth starting with a big picture conversation.
For sure. I think I was going to say we're bang on time, but we're not. We're a minute over. Just looking at the comments. Thank you, guys. That sounds really good. LA Police Department using predictive AI to predict crime hotspots before they happen. I mean, that's big, isn't it?
Real life Minority Report. Yes. There's a whole other webinar around weak versus strong AI, because what we have now is just weak AI. Strong AI is where you get into real life like Minority Report and essentially going beyond the limits of the human brain. That's a good webinar for another day, but I'm going to stop here.
We'll do that for another day. But if anyone does have any questions, shoot Sam a DM. He's your guy. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.